Here we go. Welcome to another edition of Stop Me If You've Heard This Before. This is a series of instructional videos that I have put together for my English 2 class. This one is based on some points of view. We're going to review some points of view, remind you of some things that you already know, hopefully, and then maybe introduce you to a few new concepts along the way. Just a reminder, the whole goal of this idea is to pause videos, to write down notes and questions as you have them. There's a point of view notes sheet on the Moodle page. Hopefully you've accessed that and either printed it out or you're typing these down as you're thinking about it. Bring that with you to class tomorrow if you would, after you write down some of these notes. All of them preferably, and think if you can about an example book that you've read for a couple of these terms, and let me explain what I mean by that here as we slide over a little bit. So we're going to talk about point of view, as I mentioned, and this is something that you're not all that unfamiliar with, I don't believe. So we'll do kind of a gloss over for what each one individually is, and I'm thinking I might introduce you to a couple of new concepts along the way. The easiest way, I really like this flow chart, by the way. I might just save this PowerPoint so you can see it just for yourself, although it's a little sketchy with the image. But we usually think of point of view in terms of first person or third person pronouns being used in the writing, and that's a fair way to think about it. That's the easiest way to kind of break these two sections apart. We're going to start with this third person, where we know that generally the pronouns used are he, she, it, they, right? The most common form of third person is that omniscient narration. And the omniscient is how you say that, right? Allows for unlimited knowledge of characters and their behavior. We can literally get inside the heads of all the characters in a story whenever the author deems that we need to. This is most often used in those epic stories, those longer stories, your big tales, right? Hobbits and those sorts of stories, or it's sometimes used in comedies to allow for some comedic space where we can kind of look at people and make fun of them because they want us to, right? Because the author wants us to. The eye in the sky is the way to think about that omniscient narration, right? You probably already have that idea in mind. Third person limited gives us that same pronoun usage, he, she, it, and they, right? But only through one character. We get their thoughts, feelings, and interpretations only, which really is quite a bit more realistic, and therefore kind of the novel standard, I'd say, used prototypically in novels, right? To give us inside a character's head, but also provide a little bit of that distance between the author and the character, him or herself. Last third person type, and this is a type that you probably haven't seen too much. It gives us an objective point of view as to how the story is being told. So that's the best way to think of that, as maybe a sort of a roving camera, right? Where we get certain pieces of the story, right? But without real comment or interpretation of characters' thoughts, feelings, beliefs as a result. This is mostly done through dialogue, as you might imagine, right? Because we can only get what a character's thinking, feeling, what their beliefs are, right, through that discussion that they're having with somebody else. That's why we call it objective, right? The author, the narrator, the point of view doesn't really allow us to see inside their head. So those are the third person point of view types: omniscient, limited, and objective. I came back to the flowchart to remind you here about the first person, right? The first person pronouns that we use is a major character telling the story. These are good things to think about, right? Especially as far as this first person is concerned. Let's talk about first person limited point of view. That occurs when the author disappears into one of the characters. I like that. And so we get the story told from a participant's voice. This offers more immediacy, more reality to the story, and I would argue allows us to connect with that with that person a little bit more fluently, a little bit more closely as a result. First person limited is very prevalent again in novels, and the whole goal there is to establish that connection between the main character and us as the readers. Then there's a type of first person narration called stream of consciousness. And stream of consciousness is not used a lot. It's kind of random, and kind of out there, because it attempts to reconstruct the mental processes of one character, literally going inside their mind. So you can see in the example pictures I've given you here, right, kind of how that might magnify itself, or how that might show up in story form, right? All of those thoughts that you're having over the course of the day, and you've had many of them as this video has gone on. Probably most notably, when is Mr. Dunn going to stop talking, right? Well, soon. But those sorts of thoughts is what the author attempts to write down in terms of a character's mind. Would you please bring these notes with you tomorrow to class, and hopefully you found the point of view notes on Moodle and you're able to access those and put those there, as well as a couple of examples that we'll think about in terms of which books and how we know what they are and why they're important and what they're trying to do for us. Bring those along tomorrow. We'll see you then.